Welcome to a very special episode of the Think Like a Pancreas podcast. This is our 100th episode, and with me, I have our very special guest, Gary Scheiner. He is the author of the Think Like a Pancreas book, and we're doing a special mini series where each chapter of the book will get his insights and a little bit of extras along the way.
Welcome to Think Like a Pancreas, the podcast, where our goal is to keep you informed, inspired, and a little entertained on all things diabetes. The information contained in this program is based on the experience and opinions of the Integrated Diabetes Services clinical team. Please discuss any changes to your treatment plan with your personal healthcare provider before implementing.
I'm Katlyn. I am a nurse practitioner and clinician at IDS, a certified diabetes care and education specialist. I also live with type 1 diabetes, and I'll be chiming in with my diagnosis story along with yours here in chapter 1.
Fair enough. All right. So I've lived with type 1 since 1985. Was diagnosed in the summer months between freshman and sophomore years of college. And I actually devote a lot of my first chapter of the book to kind of my backstory. And I think that everyone with type 1 diabetes and everyone who uses insulin has a backstory that's kind of interesting. I love to hear those with every new patient I see. I like to hear about their story and what got them to this point, because there's usually a lot of convoluted steps that got them here. I've been a certified diabetes care and education specialist for about a little over 30 years now. And I consider myself just a diabetologist. So I pretty much work with all aspects of diabetes care and management. I'm very into sports and fitness. So my route getting here, I passed through grad school degree in exercise physiology. So I've got a lot of passion for fitness and exercise. And that led me to my first job in the diabetes space with the Joslin Clinic. And at the time, this was back in the early 90s, Joslin was one of the few diabetes programs that gave much credence to the exercise role in diabetes care and management. So I latched on with a diabetes center that Joslin put together in the Philadelphia area, and things kind of grew from there. I started my own practice several years later, just realized that there was a need out there. People with type 1 and even people with type 2 who use insulin just needed a lot more guidance and training than they were able to get from most healthcare providers. The bandwidth of most healthcare providers is very limited when it comes to this. So I saw a need and set my sights on filling it. And the need is there because I've been a cash pay practice ever since its inception in the mid 90s. And people keep coming. I mean, they're willing to pay if they're willing to pay out of pocket, there's got to be something good about it. And it's got to be meeting a need. And I've been
Absolutely.
blessed to add some very talented clinicians to our team here at Integrated Diabetes over the years. You, Katlyn, being the most recent of those highly talented clinicians. You're a nurse practitioner, and you're the first nurse practitioner we've had. We've had nurses, but not a nurse practitioner. Explain to everybody what the difference is between just being a nurse and being a nurse practitioner.
I wouldn't say just a nurse because that's where I got my beginnings as well. And my diabetes story is inadvertently led me down that pathway into healthcare too. As with a lot of people who live with type 1, find themselves gravitating more towards positions like these, where we can help more directly with those who are living with this condition. And share the struggles that we've encountered. And it really helps, I think, give more whole person care and perspective. But so a nurse practitioner, the difference between the two, I've had advanced clinical education and training to be able to diagnose and prescribe medications, diagnose conditions. I can order imaging studies. It's compared often to a doctor. I am not a doctor. I work with many other healthcare professionals, and they all have their nuanced differences in how they practice and their styles. But I chose this pathway to help people ultimately with diabetes. Type 2, type 1, we're all struggling in the same areas of trying to get those blood sugars into a safe zone so that we can live a full life. That's the goal.
Yeah, I hear that. Yeah, most people think about diabetes complications as being a motivator, but it doesn't motivate many people. The notion that if you do the right things now, maybe in 20 years, nothing will happen. And it was a Bill Polanski quote that I'm stealing, but that really rung true. I mean, it's not a good motivator. What motivates us is
Exactly.
doing well and feeling good here and now. So I have a lot of respect for people who work in the diabetes field. It's not a lucrative field. Endocrinologists, way on down to us as diabetes educators, we're not making much money doing this. We're lucky to make ends meet. But the people who work in this field have a lot of dedication and passion for the work. And in my case, living with it personally, in your case as well, we have that extra level, I think, of compassion that comes with living with it 24/7. So,
Absolutely.
and that's why I start the book with my backstory, because I want people to know that I'm not just advising them on their diabetes. I'm living it. I'm sharing lived experience about it. I know what it
Yes.
likes to feel a high blood sugar for a long period of time. I know what it's like to feel low.
Absolutely. But let's take you back to the actual diagnosis, because I think it really sets the stage for the entire book, exactly what you're describing. Not only what you experience on a day to day, but the change in the technology from when you were diagnosed, from even when I was diagnosed, not all that further down the line. So yeah, tell us your story.
Yeah, I mean, it's a generational thing. As people diagnosed in the 40s and 50s jump ahead to the 70s and 80s, and they think, wow, they got it made. I was diagnosed in the 80s. I look back at that now and think of how archaic it was, but it's all relative. 10, 20 years from now, we're going to look back to 2026 and think, oh my goodness, the things they were doing to manage diabetes then, it's archaic. But back then, my first blood glucose measurement device was not a device at all. They were test strips that you had to apply a very large blood sample to and match the color up to the guide on the bottle. And the bottle had different shades of pinks and blues, and you try to match the color on the strip up to that and hopefully get it reasonably correct. And in those days, you didn't manage your glucose all that well. So it was either dark brown, which meant you were really high, or it was light blue, which meant you were crazy low, and not much in the middle. So that was tough. And we used a device called an autolet, which we refer to as a guillotine. It was a lancing device that swung an arm around and stuck a needle in your finger and didn't retract it. But you had to do that because you needed a fairly large amount of blood to cover the strip entirely. And really the same held true when the first meters came out. You needed at least 10 microliters of blood to activate the strip. Nowadays, meters use half a microliter or a third of a microliter. So we used to have to get 20 to 30 times as much blood as we do now to get the strip activated. So that was just to get an estimate of what your glucose was at that point in time. Now we just pop a sensor on and a couple of weeks later, change the sensor. And in between, it's showing us continuously what's going on. So come a long way there. Administering insulin, we only had syringes, and pens were just starting to roll out around that time. But the pens then weren't as sophisticated as they are now. The needles for the syringes were large. They were usually about half an inch long, or I think 13 to 15 millimeters long, and they were fairly thick. So you felt those when you injected. When I was diagnosed, I was thin as a rail. I had gone from 160 pounds down to 118 pounds when I was diagnosed. And that's what happens. And before diagnosis, your body's just burning up all its fat stores for energy. They can't burn glucose. It's not getting into the cells. So my body fat was completely gone. So trying to stick that half-inch needle in my abdomen and not have it hit muscle was tricky because there was just no fat there. I have a photo in the book of what I looked like at the day of my diagnosis. I had a date that night and I did not want to miss it. So I went on the date anyway. And I looked like a coat hanger. My clothes were just falling off of me. I was so real, and I couldn't tighten my belt enough really to keep my pants from drooping down. So I lost a lot of weight leading up. In fact, I had all the classic symptoms. That entire summer of 85, I was urinating constantly. I was drinking incessantly. I was hungry and I was tired and I was losing weight despite eating and drinking constantly. I thought, maybe I'm just I'm peeing so much and I'm losing weight because I'm sweating a lot. I didn't really understand. And what cued me in to the idea that I might have diabetes was watching television. I was watching a show, MASH, and there was a character on the show who was a helicopter pilot who had type 1 diabetes and had all the same symptoms I had. And the bell went off, the light bulb went on. I realized I got to get this checked. So I went to our family doctor. He did some test in his office and he came back in and he said, "Oh, Gary, I got good news and I got bad news." He said, "Bad news is you've got diabetes." And I don't even remember what the good news was because that scared the living bejesus out of me. He said, "I'm going to have this the rest of my life. I'm going to have to take insulin. But the worst thing of all," he said, "you're going to have to be very careful about what you eat." Now, I was 18, underweight, hungry all the time. And even before all this happened, I had the appetite of a small country. I inherited that from my dad. Real high metabolism. So food was a passion. I love to eat. And then he's telling me, "Oh, you got to be real careful about what you eat." And that, I hated that. So he sent me to an endocrinologist, and a nurse met with me. The nurse then did everything. She taught the diet. She taught the everything. And she gave me an exchange diet. Were you ever given an exchange diet to follow?
When I was diagnosed, I knew about exchanges, but it was more heavily on specifically carb counting. And the way that it was taught to me is that a typical meal, given your age and all the things, should be about 60 grams of carb. So that's what I would aim for. And even still to this day, I find it hard to input into my insulin pump more than 60 carbs because then I'm not following the plan. I'm eating more than I'm supposed to.
It
Um,
psyched you out. But the exchange diet didn't really teach carb counting. It taught just eating certain amounts of food from different categories. And
right.
the quantities had to fit the category, like grapes. Grape was considered in the fruit group, but you had to know how many grapes. A banana was in the fruit group, but it was half a banana represented one fruit serving. Those unrealistic portion sizes were a problem.
Right. Who's
And
carrying an extra half of banana with them?
yeah. I mean, exactly. So I got to eat. My breakfast it was like 3 things from the bread exchange, 1 from the fruit, 1 from the milk. You got 1 fat. I don't know how you get fat at breakfast unless you smear cream cheese on something.
Maybe an
And
avocado.
or an avocado. And that was breakfast. And 5 minutes later, I'm starving. So it didn't go over so well. But over time, you learn new approaches to diet and managing blood sugar. And carb counting for me was a revolution. It was so nice learning how to match my insulin to what I ate. And that way I could eat more or less. Trust me, I never ate less than the recommended amount. It was always that amount or more, never less. And I could just match my insulin to it. But it took a while for that type of methodology to roll around.
Yep.
Exercise was a major challenge. And I was working out all the time. I played basketball, I would run, I lifted weights. And it was tough because the insulins we used back then were not conducive to daytime exercise or nighttime for that matter. We used NPH insulin as the basal insulin. And NPH insulin peaks like 4 to 8 hours after you take it. So when you take it in the morning, there's this load of it working in all afternoon. And then when you take it again at night, there's a load of it working in the middle of the night. And then at meal times, you would take your mealtime insulin, which back then was called regular. Regular is still available, and we use it as is NPH. We don't use NPH very much, but regular, still can play a role, especially with slow digesting meals. But then that was all we had at meal times was regular. That stuff took about 2 to 4 hours to peak. So you can imagine how the blood sugars looked right after meals. The good news is we had no idea how high we were spiking because we didn't have CGMs.
We didn't check after the meal. It was
No,
before.
I didn't want to use the guillotine twice at a meal. I wanted to use it once, get it out of the way, and have my meal. But the first time I used the CGM was around the year 2000. And it was one of those mini med devices that didn't show you the data. It just stored it. And when I downloaded it and I saw the spikes, this like Mount Everest taking place after every meal before the insulin would kick in. And I realized, well, there's a problem here. But, eventually, rapid acting insulins became available. That helped, didn't solve everything. In fact, I still remember I was working at Joslin when the Lilly rep came in to introduce the team to Humalog. He said, this insulin is fast. So you got to teach your patients that they've got to have their food ready right in front of them when they take it. Because if they wait at all, they'll probably have a low blood sugar. Of course, we know now that's nonsense. Humalog and Novolog, they take 15 minutes to start doing anything. They're fast, they're rapider than regular, but they're not truly rapid insulins.
No, I still consider them to be slow. Depending on the situation, what you're eating, it can be frustrating to try to match your dose to all the variables of this disease.
Yeah, and there are a lot of variables. We've made lists that we share with our patients of all the factors that can raise and lower glucose, factors that influence rates of digestion. Yeah, it's a lot of stuff. But I guess, that in our role as diabetes care and education specialists, as diabetologists, that's our job, is to teach people these things, help them apply them, and teach them how to self-manage. The first time I learned the concept of self-management was I was living in Chicago, and I went to this outpatient, like a diabetes fair, and there was a speaker there who was discussing exercise specifically. And I had had a lot of nasty lows related to exercise. So I was very interested in what he had to say. And he was teaching about self-adjusting your insulin doses. This was the first time I had heard about that. And this was in the kind of late 80s. For years, I had just been taking the prescribed dose every day. Same dose, NPH regular, NPH regular. And he was teaching, well, if you're going to exercise, take half the dose you normally would beforehand. And if you're going to exercise when your NPH is working really hard, either take less that morning or takes a lot of extra carbs that you don't dose for. In the back of my mind, I'm thinking, wait a minute, eat food and don't dose for it? That's cheating, right? Kind of like you and your 60-gram rule.
Exactly.
So, self-management became the key phrase. No longer do we have to set up an insulin program and conform your life to it. Now you can live the life you want to live and conform your insulin program to match it. So, the later chapters of the book, we talk about, setting up a basal bolus insulin program, and then all of the nuances of fine tuning the doses and adjusting and getting the timing right, which you mentioned is also quite.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of people, just like you described, this Lilly rep came and really had a fear-based approach that they were sharing with that healthcare team of, this is going to cause lows. You have to do this exactly, or it's going to create this effect.
Mm-hmm.
And so then that for people is scary, right? I'm going to take this. It's supposed to save my life, but it might kill me too. And or just take it though and do what you want with it. That's what a lot of times people struggle with, maintaining their blood sugars in that safe zone, because they don't know the little nuances of what you just described, right? If you're going to be more active, it's a predictable effect that you're going to be using your insulin more effectively. So either you need less of it or you need to offset that with carbohydrates.
Yeah.
But it's not as black and white as that. And so working with somebody that can help uncover the nuances for that individual is so important.
Yeah. And that's something that AI will never be able to do. AI offers certain advantages to us. It can help with pattern analysis and whatnot, but you have to know the person. You have to know the individual in order to truly be able to help them and provide valid advice and recommendations. And that's the power of working person to person. And we do almost all of our work one-on-one, unless there's children and families involved, but it's one-on-one. And getting to know a person is critical. That's why I felt chapter 1 of my book should be devoted to the reader getting to know me and understanding my background, where I'm coming from. I try to have a sense of humor, and I don't want people to take it the wrong way. Diabetes is serious, but you don't want to take yourself too seriously, because we want to have fun, we want to have, enjoy ourselves. It doesn't have to be work. We could make games out of it and try to enjoy. Like every time I count carbs now, I call it a fist method. I'll estimate based on portion size, but before I look at the label on the package, I estimate. And if I come within 5 grams, I tell my wife, Debbie, hey, I got within 2 grams of this one. I'm all excited. And she just goes, hooray, yeah, I'm very happy for you. And she goes on with what she's doing. But to me, that's exciting.
It's a big deal.
Yeah, it's pretty cool to be able to do that.
Yeah, I agree. I think your diagnosis story and mine actually parallel quite a lot. I got to be honest with you though, Gary, when you were diagnosed, I was -2 years old.
Don't remind me I'm so old.
I was diagnosed 2 weeks after I turned 15. And I joke with people, I similar approach, take it with humor. I was able to enjoy my birthday cake without having to carb count and think about other things for one last time. And when I finally had a birthday where I had lived longer with diabetes than I had without, it was kind of eye-opening. Oh, wow. But here I am. So I had a scheduled appointment for suspected diabetes because of a similar thing. My grandmother had seen on TV a special about type 1 diabetes. And I know my mom watched MASH too. I watched it with her sometimes. So maybe they saw that episode. I don't know. But even then, that wasn't enough for when my grandmother talked to my mom and I'm 15 running around and like my bathing suit in the swimming pool in the summer. You could see my rib cage. I'd lost so much weight. I was maybe 100 pounds and 5 feet 5 inches tall. And I was so thirsty and craving candy. I actually gave my mom some allowance and said, hey, can you buy me some candy bars and things?
Did your vision get screwed up? Because we both wear glasses. I'm
Yours
very
was better.
nearsighted, and I could suddenly start seeing things in a distance without glasses, which was amazing.
Right. Well, I'm the opposite type of prescription, which makes sense. So signs started to become more fuzzy. I wasn't able to read the things that I could before. But I didn't think much of it. I remember getting yelled at on a road trip because I drank so much of that giant big gulp that was meant to be shared around the car. I've got 7 siblings plus me, so it was a lot of people.
Yeah.
And
big gulps aren't so big when you're thirsty like that.
No, it's unquenchable thirst. Like I would drink, be okay for 2 seconds maybe, and then want to drink the whole thing again.
So need an uncontrolled diabetic gulp.
Yes, it would have been a backpack. At least. But so yeah, I had an appointment. I remember the blood glucose value was 538. And so they shuttled me into an exam room and it was a nurse practitioner who saw me and she was sad. My mom was sad. I started crying, but I didn't know why. I did not know what diabetes was. And I remember she took out of her purse, the nurse practitioner, this drink that was yellow. She's like, here, you can have this. It's got no sugar in it. It was Crystal Light lemonade, and that became my favorite drink for a very long time. And so I learned, right, what you're supposed to do, what you're not supposed to do. I've been a rule follower for a long time. So for me, it was just, okay, what do I apply? How do I do it? But I've learned so much over the years, and I went into the field of nursing because I was medically disqualified from the Air Force. That's actually what I was planning to do. But I don't regret my actions and the pathway that diabetes has taken me. And I've always loved learning and teaching. So in this role, I get to do all of the above and help other people across my career.
I think we both agree, even with all the technologies that we have today, this is a person-oriented condition. It's a people
100%.
thing. And healthcare providers need to relate to people as individuals. We got to think outside the box. There's no one-size-fits-all when it comes to this condition. Even people on our own staff, the clinicians on the IDS staff who all live with type 1, we all manage it differently. And we got different needs, different interests, different backgrounds. And that's okay. I embrace that.
I think we've come a long way. And we'll talk about it in different chapters, the different tools and resources and application of those things. As we close out this episode, I actually want to read a quote to you. It is written by you in the Think Like a Pancreas book. So it says, thinking like a pancreas does not mean achieving perfect glucose control. It means doing the best we can with the tools and technologies available to us, matching insulin to our ever-changing, evolving needs, and living a very high-quality life while we do it. It's what it's all about.
Actually sounds like me. Yeah, I did write that.
Yeah, you did. I think it was on the nose. Well, Gary, I appreciate your insights, and I'm looking forward to hearing additional chapters from your book.
Thanks, Caitlin.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to Think Like a Pancreas, the podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to like, follow, or subscribe on your favorite podcast app. On behalf of Think Like a Pancreas, the podcast, I'm Gary Scheiner, wishing you a fantastic week ahead. And don't forget to think like a pancreas.